Okay, so we are now going to give you a brief overview of the 3D printer here and identify all the components and parts which are there in this 3D printer. So first of all, I want to start by saying that this is the x-axis. This is the x-axis movement. This is the y-axis movement, and the z-axis movement is when the whole x-axis assembly moves up and down. So let us look at each of these axes in detail. The x-axis is driven with this stepper motor here, which is connected with this timing belt tied to the 3D printed part here, and goes on the other end to the idler assembly here. The extruder, this is the extruder here, which is mounted onto the extruder holder plate and which is in turn tied up to the timing belt connected to the stepper motor. The other thing on the x-axis is that there is this limit switch here set up so that once the extruder assembly goes to one side, it presses the limit switch so that the 0 is set up. So basically the 0 of the x-axis is at the leftmost point of the printer. This is the 0, and this is the full x-axis movement, which would be about 180 mm. So now let's look at the y-axis. So for the y-axis, the y stepper motor is here, which is connected with the timing belt, and the heat bed assembly has a 3D printed part at the bottom, which is tied up to the timing belt and which runs to this idler here on the other side. The y-axis movement has a limit switch which is mounted on the threaded rod, and this is adjustable. So if I pull this back, so basically the y0 will be moved, will be pushed back. So you can adjust it so that the y0 is set up here at this point. So this is the y0, and this is the full positive y, which would be about 190 mm. So as we can see that when we home the y-axis, the bed will come. See, look at this here. The bed will come here, and the linear bearing LM8UU will push the limit switch and set the y0. So this is the y-axis. Now let's look at the z-axis. For the z-axis, there are two stepper motors, 1 and 2. These stepper motors are connected with the helical coupler, which are in turn connected with the lead screw. So there are two stepper motors, two helical couplers, and two lead screws. The whole of the x-axis assembly is mounted on the lead screw with the copper nut on both sides. So when we'll turn, I can't turn the z-axis by hand. So when we'll turn the z-axis, the whole x-axis assembly will move up and down. Regarding the limit switch for the z-axis, it's a little different from the x and the y-axis. The limit switch is here. This is the limit switch, and it is triggered once the axis moves down and triggers this. But we have a bolt here, M3 bolt here, tied up with a nut and a spring, and the bottom part, this triggers the limit switch. The reason why we do is that this allows the axis, the limit switch, to be adjustable. So if we extend the screw here, the 0 will be pushed, the 0 will be activated when the axis is higher up. So this is done to avoid the extruder nozzle from crashing into the bed. So we'll come to the bed leveling in a few minutes, and there we'll use this adjustment here on the z-axis to set the proper height of the nozzle over the heat bed. So these are the three axes. The other things that we want to cover in this intro is the heat bed. The heat bed is a PCB heat bed which is connected with the power, which is connected to the ramps board here through the power wires, positive and negative, and there's a thermistor taped at the bottom of the heat bed via a piece of a Kapton tape. The thermistor basically is a temperature sensor, and which tells the processor, the control processor, how hot the bed is, and based on that the power is adjusted. On top of the PCB heat bed, we have a glass top covered with Kapton tape. The Kapton tape is installed, is taped to improve the adhesion of the 3D printed part. Next we'll look at the control electronics. This is the ramps 1.4 with the Arduino here. These are the stepper motor drivers. This is the power supply. You can look at the manual to see the wiring diagram. Let me show you something here. Okay, so as per the wiring diagram, this is the limit switch controls, the limit switch connectors, X, then blank, then Y, then blank, then Z. So they are put, I mean there's one blank after each of them, X blank, Y blank, Z blank, and these two wires, this is the thermistor for the extruder, and this is the thermistor for the heat bed. The stepper motors are X stepper motor, Y stepper motor, and there are two Z stepper motors. The extruder stepper motor is connected here on this side, and the power connectors are, this is for the extruder power, extruder heater power, this is for the extruder fan power in the middle, and this is for the heat bed power. And this is the connector which is connected to the power supply. So this is positive 12 volt ground, positive 12 volt and ground. The LCD is connected to the control board using these cables here. Show the LCD. Okay, LCD shows the temperature of the, focus on here. Okay, temperature of the heat bed. So this is the temperature of the extruder, temperature of the heat bed, and X, Y, Z positions, and the status as we'll print. So the first thing that we'll do is, okay, before we even connect to the computer, one more thing to show you is the power supply. The power supply is here, which is connected to 220 volt power and connected to the ramps using the 12 volt power supply. So this is a 3D printer. Now in our next video we are going to connect it and home it and see what all configuration we need to do.